as the temporary clerk for this meeting only. Thank you, Greg. Maybe dial it down a little bit.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Carries. If I could ask the newly appointed clerk Slavens to call the roll.
Okay, Trustee Anthony.
Present.
Trustee Foster.
Good evening.
Trustee Hudak, Graham Hudak.
Evening.
Let the record show Clerk Segrist is out of town. Treasurer Slavens is here. Trustee Snyderman
I am here.
and Supervisor William.
Good evening. Call for adoption of the agenda as presented.
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Favor the motion is presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have one set of minutes that we need to approve this evening. Call for a motion to approve the minutes of the February 26, 2019 meeting.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we approve the minutes from February 26th.
Second.
Favor of the motion is presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Now would be a time in our agenda for citizens' non-agenda public comment. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment this evening?
Oh, you're in
I
trouble.
think we have.
Oh.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor.
Good evening.
Good evening to all the other board members.
Good evening.
It's
Judge
my great
Slavens.
honor and privilege to acknowledge the treasurer, Diane Slavens, my wife's birthday.
Happy birthday.
And she did not know I was going to do this, so. But what I would like to do, if the supervisor would allow me, is I have a birthday cake here I would like to present her with.
Please
And
go
once
right
you've
ahead.
completed your meeting, I would like all of you to have a piece, all of your staff to have a piece, and anybody who's brave enough to stay to the end of this public to please have a piece also. May I approach and
Yes,
give,
absolutely.
give
sir.
her
Please
this?
do.
Okay.
Please do so.
So,
Calm down, ladies, calm down. Oh. To you. They're singing. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday,
Treasurer
dear
Clerk
Diane.
Slavens. Happy birthday
to you. Yay. Good job.
Leah first.
All of our husbands have a lot to live up to now.
It's good for another month.
Is there any additional public comment? Is there any additional public comment?
Supervisor Brian Amon, on a non-agenda item, I just wanted to point out, she got the cake, but in the season of The Bachelor, she also got the roast.
That's right, that's right.
So he's working it, I'm just saying.
Very smooth, Attorney, thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Okay. We have a first item on the agenda this evening. Oh.
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion that we pay the bills.
Thank you. Motion's on the floor to pay the bills.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Once again, the bills will be paid. Thank you, Diane, for catching that. We have two presentations. First, we have a legislative update by Candler, Ree, Corey, and much more. We have Representative Stephanie Johnson in the audience with us this evening. Ma'am, we have a larger group here. Would you be okay if we flip-flop the order and pulled this group ahead so they can get on with their... Okay, if that's okay with the board, can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So I have a very special proclamation where we are recognizing April 2019 as the National Arab American Heritage Month. So let me go do that, please. If I could, I'd like to read the proclamation, and then we're going to get several copies of the formal proclamation signed and for presentation the next couple of days. We'll get that to Summer, if that's okay with everybody? Okay. So here we go. Whereas, for over a century, Arab Americans have been making valuable contributions to virtually every aspect of American society in medicine, law, business, education, technology, government, military service, culture, and whereas, since migrating to America, men and women of Arab descent have shared their rich culture and traditions with neighbors and friends, while also setting fine examples of model citizens and public servants. And whereas, they brought with them to America the resilient family values, strong work ethics, dedication to education, diversity in faith and creed that have added to the strength of our great democracy. And whereas, Arab Americans have also enriched our society by sharing an entrepreneurial American spirit that makes our nation free and prosperous. And whereas, the history of Arab Americans in the U.S. neglected and defaced by misconceptions, bigotry, anti-Arab hate in the forms of crimes and speech. And whereas, American issues such as civil rights abuses, harmful stereotyping, and bullying must be combated in forms of education and awareness. And whereas they join all Americans in the desire to see a peaceful and diverse society where every individual is treated equally and feels safe. And whereas the incredible contributions and heritage of the Arab Americans has helped us to build a better nation. Now, therefore, we announce that the Canton Township hereby celebrates the contributions Arab Americans have made to society and does hereby declare April 29th to be National Arab American Heritage Month in Canton. We encourage our community to join us in this special observance. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, I'm going to ask that we put this in the minutes.
Second?
The motion is presented. Please state aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Summer, would you like to make a comment?
Please, thank you. Good evening, Supervisor Williams, our Board of Trustee, Leisure Service Director and staff, and also the Commission, hopefully Commission of Culture, Art, and Heritage. Thank you for recognizing April as National Arab American Heritage Month. We are excited that Arab American contributions to Michigan and to the United States are deserving this honor. We truly appreciate this proclamation to recognize and celebrate the community's diversity that strengthen Canton, Michigan, and our American democracy. With more than 4 million Arab Americans living in the United States, it is important that we honor the contributions made by amazing individuals that made history. Arab Americans have impacted the American way of life in many ways, including education, business, and government. Arab Americans are hardworking individuals that make our township strong. We in Canton know that whether they are business owners, doctors, lawyers, engineers, or factory workers, Arab Americans add to the tapestry of our community and feel welcome to live, work, and raise a family. We are people from many backgrounds, but have a common goal: to live in a community with respect and tolerance. We look forward to work together, bridge gaps, and promote Arab American heritage and culture through the township and the departments and different activities. Our township is only 15 miles away from Dearborn, and we're the largest Arab American community in the nation. Made positive change in Southeast Michigan and around the country. Their contribution includes the creation of the Center for Arab American Studies at the University of Michigan, Dearborn, which teaches the history and experiences of Arab Americans to students from all over the world. Also, Dearborn houses the Arab American National Museum, which is the world's first museum devoted to Arab Americans' history, culture, and attracts thousands of visitors. And I hope you all visit and tour the exhibits of the museum one day soon. Again, thank you, everyone, Canton Township, for recognizing April as National Arab American Month. Let's celebrate together the rich, vibrant heritage and culture and pay tribute to the contributions of Arab Americans. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Also, one thing. In April, there is an event that's going to be happening in Dearborn, if anybody's interested. It's Debke Group is a folkloric dance troupe from Palestine. It's called Wishah. They're coming to Dearborn on Saturday, April 6th, and that's also to launch the Arab American Heritage Month in Michigan. Thank you. At Fortson High School.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Now, if you guys would like to,
Yes.
got some sweets? Okay, maybe put them in the back? Okay, all right.
Cake, baklava.
Gain of 20 pounds tonight between the cake and the sweets. Yes. Actually, Summer, if we could, just, let's leave them, open them up, and we'll leave them in the back. And then we'll certainly, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Very nice. Now, Stephanie, if you could, Stephanie Johnson from KKRM is going to provide us a legislative update with the, had the whirling dervish of the lame duck period that's behind us, and now we've got a new group of legislators in. Looking forward to the update. More than welcome, thank you.
Good evening. As you stated, the lame duck session is over. We had quite an eventful one, obviously. Whenever you have such a change in state government with a new governor, particularly changing parties, leadership, and then such a large incoming group coming in the first of that year, you can pretty much bet you're going to have a lame duck that's going to be extremely active. Canton Township was very successful, largely through a really active and well-managed grassroots effort on a piece of legislation that would preempt local units of government from enacting what we call a tree ordinance. Or Canton Township has a very successful tree ordinance that you're quite proud of. There was an attempt to try to eliminate that, to prohibit you from having that, and through a whole host of legislative meetings and a lot of political wrangling, we were successful in making sure that that didn't happen during the lame duck. Now, I'm not convinced that you won't see some similar legislation be introduced in the future. I don't think this is anything that you can necessarily take for granted. But communities who have these kind of ordinances that are important to them and they feel are very necessary in order to enhance their community and the community appreciates them, I think you should always be talking to your elected officials and making sure that they're aware of this and that you are going to be very clear about advocating for this and making sure it doesn't happen. With that, we had, an election season, obviously, and that means there's a large turnover in the state legislature. We have term limits in Michigan. In the House, you are allowed to serve 6 years total, 2 3-year terms, and in the Senate, you serve 2 4-year terms, 8 years total, and that's a lifetime limit. So what that does is create a lot of turnover, several election years. This particular one was no different. We have a total of 43 new legislators in the House. That's out of 110. So that's a lot of new people, a lot of new faces, people who are trying to figure out how the process begins. We got committee assignments in about mid-January. Committee assignments are something that we all kind of wait for to determine who's going to chair what committees. This year, the House has decided to do something a little different than what they've done in the past. They have initiated a new Ways and Means Committee. We have the appropriations process. You have the main appropriations committee and the subcommittees below that handle each individual budget area. On the policy side, we have the policy committees, such as Health Policy Committee or Local Government Committee, and generally they take bills that affect that subject area, report them to the House floor. Well, that's all changed now. We have what they call the Ways and Means Committee. So as a bill is reported out of Health Policy or the House Families Committee, it then goes to the Ways and Means Committee for another committee round. And then from that point, it is discharged to the House. So it's another step in the process. This is new. We're all sort of sitting back and watching to see how it works. The Ways and Means Committee has really started meeting faithfully last week, so there's a lot for us to learn. The legislature has been kind of slow at introducing bills. They've introduced a few packages, but we haven't had a lot of real activity yet. Some committee activity, but nothing like we're used to. It's taken a little while for things to get started. I think some of that was the weather. We had those days where they closed down state offices because of the roads and the weather conditions, and I think that sort of slowed things down. as well as the governor's budget recommendation did not come out until March 5th. And that's fairly late in the process too, but a first-time governor, they allow them extra time to put together their priorities and to put out a budget recommendation. That happened last week. The governor's released her budget recommendation to the legislature, and it's an extensive budget recommendation. I'm sure most of your community has heard about the gas tax that's on the table. There's some other proposals on the table that she has put together. There's a the road problem, I think any of us who have driven the roads understand that there is clearly a problem. We have to fix something here. There's something going wrong. About 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there was a gas tax that was passed. I think it was 20 cents with a COLA increase to it. And at the time, honestly, I think most people involved in transportation and involved in road funding knew that that wouldn't be enough at the time. It was just sort of a Band-Aid approach. The problem is getting more expensive the more that these roads aren't repaired, the more costly it is to repair them. And so now they're pegging the problem at about $1.8 billion problem, almost $2 billion. So the governor has decided to be bold, if you want to call it that, and put out a gas tax of 45 cents, phasing it in 15 cents at a time over the course of 2 years. So the first 6 months, 3 years. The first 6 months, 15 cents, then 15 cents, then 15 cents. That would put the total gas tax up to, I think, 71 cents. In addition to that, we have a formula, PA 51, that most transportation funds run through, where there's a formula in place that determines what communities receive how much of the road funding. She's proposing that this new money is not part of that formula. That formula stays in place with the money that's already being collected, but the new money goes through a different formula. And in that, she's prioritizing different roads that may not necessarily be impacted by the current PA 51 formula. Depending on what part of the state you live in, depends on how well you like this idea. If you're in Southeast Michigan, you're probably very happy about this. If you are in Northern Michigan or the UP, you're not so happy. Because the new formula or this additional formula is based largely on the amount of traffic these roads are receiving and the population of the area. I have attached some documents to the report. I didn't want to inundate you with paper, but because this is a brand new proposal, the budget's only been out for a week, we still don't have all the line items of everything, and we're still trying to flesh this out to figure out all the details. I've put together some information from House and Senate Fiscal, as well as the governor's budget recommendation presentation, that I hope can provide you some additional detail and help you understand it further. In addition to the road funding, I mean, she's also proposing some significant increases in the per pupil foundation and to school funding. She's got some new programs that will make, in her goal of making college, particularly community college and four-year education, more affordable for individuals seeking that. And so a lot of that is all tied up into this transportation proposal. Part of the gas tax that was passed 3-4 years ago, it shifted some general fund money from the school aid budget to the transportation budget. She's proposing that that money now go back to the school aid budget, and the transportation budget is pretty much funded entirely by the gas tax revenue, from what I've been able to glean thus far. Auto no-fault reform, that is something that's been talked about, I think, probably for about the last 8 or 10 years. It's been, legislation has been pending in the legislature for about that same period of time. It's a pretty complicated issue, trying to weigh the cost individuals pay for their car insurance premium and the benefits that you get with that. Michigan's one of the few states that has a no-fault law. We have the Catastrophic Claims Association Fund, which provides lifetime care if you are catastrophically injured in an auto accident. We're paying, I think, right now roughly around $195 per vehicle per year for that. But if you are living in certain communities, the cost of car insurance is pretty unaffordable for a lot of people, and they're unable to purchase it. So there's been a lot of debate, a lot of discussion on this. I am hearing rumblings that it is the desire of some legislators to include the auto no-fault reform debate with the budget debate. So if there is a gas tax that doesn't ultimately become enacted, people can at least get some potential relief from their auto insurance premiums. We'll see how that works. It's a pretty big lift to take on, as well as the budget at the same time. But this legislature is certainly motivated to try to reform auto no-fault and create some savings for individuals. Representative Bo Lefebvre from the UP has introduced a bill. We've been calling it the dark store legislation. I know that there's been some concerns in this community with box stores. People move in and they pay a tax rate that is consistent with the previous business that was there, not necessarily the new business. And so there's a concern that they're not assessed at a fair value. I know he's interested in this because Marquette has had a very similar problem and has had a very hard time trying to deal with this and grapple with this in their community. He's reintroduced that legislation. The Michigan Chamber of Commerce is still very much opposed to it. And we'll see how far that one goes. If I remember correctly, I think about 4 years ago, this same bill was reported out of the committee, House committee, and it sat on the House floor and sort of died a slow death there. And I think there's a number of people motivated to try to pass this legislation this go-around.
To add to that, remind the board that we contributed $5,000 towards the Escanaba case.
Oh, okay.
Defense of dark stores through MTA. There was several of the larger townships pulled together to help in that lawsuit, so.
Okay, great. And then, just to bring to your attention, we had proposal 3 that passed this last session, this last election, which is going to make some significant changes in voter rights and how voting is done, absentee voter legislation as well. The governor has put in funding to start applying this and help communities with voting machines and to become compliant with that proposal. And then at the end of the report, I have included the legislation that we have as part of the Canton Township bill tracking. If there's anything here that you believe is left off, please feel free to let me know.
Just the opposite, Stephanie. It's
Okay.
almost too much to digest.
It's too much?
To get it daily, yeah.
Well, you know, how we do this is if there's anything I think you're going to remotely be touched by, I send it your way. Just because it's here doesn't mean we're actively working it. I really depend on you to tell me based on that. So don't be overwhelmed by it, but just know that those are out there, and then we will target and mark those bills that you want to have special consideration and concentration on. So with that, I will take any questions that any of you might have for me and answer them.
Summer?
I have questions. Hi, Stephanie. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming. I have a few questions about the governor's budget, and you touched on this a little bit, about the new roads revenue possibly going through, I think she calls it the Fixing Michigan Roads program, which I actually like that it's separate from the general fund, and it doesn't go through PA 51, which is an antiquated formula, in my opinion. But do you see any path forward for that, or do you think that it would be implemented in whatever funding package they come up with?
I do. I think that the leadership in this legislative session and the governor have really been trying very hard to work together. They know they need each other in order to get anything accomplished. I think that the leadership in the House and Senate recognize clearly that there's a road problem. They may not, I'm not saying anybody has signed on to the proposal that's been presented, but I do see a path. And I think that, the governor's making her rounds and trying to talk with constituents across the state. Legislators are certainly hearing from their constituents. And I think as negotiations begin, we'll see something shake out. The alternative funding proposal has some people a little concerned. Like I said, depending on the part of the state you live in, depends on how well you like it. But that's all the negotiation process, and this has a long process. The legislature has prided themselves over the last 8 years by having the budget done in mid-June and patting themselves on the back and going home. I'm not predicting that this year, but I think that they're still committed to working together, and that bipartisanship is still fairly strong.
Last legislative session, they attempted to do something about civil asset forfeiture, and there's some movement on it this year. What do you see happening with that?
I see that eventually getting to the governor's desk. That was Senate Bill 2 was the first bill that came out of the Senate this legislative session. Senator Lucido sponsored the bill. He's the chair of the committee. He moved it fairly quick. There is an identical House bill that has moved out of the House and is in the Senate, so they both crossed over. I think it's a matter of negotiation to see which one ultimately ends up being the final product. But I do see something happening on that probably sooner rather than later.
Are the bills pretty similar? Do they both require conviction?
Yes, they
before
do. Yes, they do.
And quick question on marijuana. A lot of people have been concerned about the medical or the recreational marijuana law that recently passed. And one of the concerns that I had when we had a conversation about marijuana here at this board was that there's no bank that you could put revenues from marijuana, and people are taking big duffel bags to Lansing to pay their taxes because they can't deposit money into the bank because of money laundering laws. Do you know if there's any legislation on creating a state bank for marijuana sales?
I have heard that brought up. There is no legislation at this point. I think that that comes with a host of problems. You know, one of the main issues is banks are federally insured, and it's still federally not permissible to legalize marijuana. And so that's where the real rub comes in on the issue. They have taken the whole issue area of marijuana, made its own type 1 agency. They just did that last week. So that's going to deal with the licensing process and dispensaries and the testing and all of that. That still has to be fleshed out yet. On the medical marijuana side, they were just starting to get things taken care of and figuring it out, and then this came along and became legal for recreational, and now they still are playing catch up. It's going to take some time, even though there's some pretty tight time limits for licenses, I think, are December. But as far as having a state bank, there's a lot of problems with trying to develop that, and who's going to insure it and how it's going to be insured. And so at this time, there isn't legislation. I think it's just sort of talk amongst interested people.
Thank you.
Stephen?
Great questions by Summer. I just had one question, not on anything that you reported, but something I had been thinking about, and we haven't even brought up here, where we passed our local roads millage last August, and we're just starting to collect revenues on that, and we'll start doing things with the money starting this year. I'm not even sure this is something that is legislated, but have you heard anything about small cell technology in Lansing and what they're doing with it, and whether they're going to, and how it will affect small communities?
I have heard of it. I'm not educated enough to really comment at this time, but let me do some research and get you some information.
I can tell you that's been an ongoing conversation with Michigan Townships Association, Big 20. What it does is, if the legislation that was being proposed passes, our DDA district is going to be loaded with a bunch of ugly, I'll control my language, a bunch of ugly boxes along our DDA district that we spent millions trying to beautify and look nice. So Yep, a lot of the bigger townships are in opposition to it.
Okay.
For that reason, and I would have no problem putting them up on top of IKEA and Kmart and Myers. Put it up on the commercial buildings. Don't put it in the right-of-ways, please.
The specific thing that I was looking at was having a discussion on it in relation to what we do with Ford Road and not anything that adds to the cost of what the millage is for, but whether there's revenues that can be obtained by new technologies like that, the different companies that deploy them, and also in preparation for smart cars and other things like that. Yeah, I don't even know anything about the aesthetics of it, so, I mean, I'm sure that's part of it, but I wasn't sure if they were legislating even how much a township like us could get per smart cell, small smart cell, so. Okay, yeah, any information in the next
Yeah,
coming months would be
And I
helpful.
apologize, because I know that there is something related to technology within the governor's presentation
Okay.
for gas tax increase, so I'll get more specifics from that for you as well.
Thanks.
Last time I heard it was just going to get railroaded through, so here we watch and we wait. Wait and we watch. Okay. Jim or John?
The budget, you're cautiously optimistic that it will be finalized by this summer?
No.
No.
I think that I think that they will have a budget in the summer. How soon this summer, I'm still a little leery about, only because it has been introduced much later than normal. So that already creates an issue. After next week, they have their 2-week spring recess, and then they come back. So that puts you halfway through April. So to have it done by mid-June, I think is a little optimistic. It won't stop people from trying, and particularly with this particular budget, with some of the recommendations, it's going to take a while for them to negotiate those out, I believe. So I'm thinking July, maybe September even, but I'm thinking July might be the earliest that we have a budget.
The 74-cent increase in gas tax, is that doable right now, or is that, I mean, they throw it out at 74, but they want 54. Is that the game they're playing, or what?
Could be. Could be. I don't have a great answer for that. Remember, if the full 45 takes effect, it'll be phased in over a period of a year and a half, 6 months at a time. And then that takes it to the 71-cent level, I believe. But, yeah, sometimes that's a great way to start. You show death and...
Lousy way to do business. What about Act 51? Is there any proposed changes in that where we, as a township, do not receive the full benefit?
There is a lot of discussion about changing Act 51, but there's a lot of discussion about changing that every year. It's a pretty complicated act that gets, that takes away from a lot of people if you start going in and redoing the formula. So will you see legislation introduced? Very likely. Will it pass? Less likely,
Thank you.
in my opinion.
And thanks for the report. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and you might not have anything on it, but I'm reaching out to Dana Polhanke, State Senator. Have you met with her yet?
One time, yes.
Yeah, okay. She said that in 2017, there's a large work group that worked on something called the Solid Waste and Sustainability, and a bill was introduced during the lame duck session at the end of last year based on that report. You might not know, but 2 weeks ago, Westland voted on whether or not to take their recycling to an incinerator or a landfill, and that's happening across the country. And so I'm wondering what our state is doing, and from what State Senator Polhanke said, it was part of this work group that was discussing that. So if you could find out.
Okay, I will have to look up that report and get familiar with that.
I can add up to that. The internet tax that was passed, there's $62 million, of which half or all of it's going to go to recycling grants across the state, number one. Number two, Rashida Tlaib engaged a group of activists out of her district and flipped the Westland Council on voting to incinerate anything That may be, we had another meeting this morning with Conference of Western Wayne between myself, Dearborn, Northville Township, and the city of Westland. I think Westland's probably the furthest ahead. They'll probably be shifting some of their flows of the recyclings to a MRF in Hamtramck that is more creative and proactive in solutions. But the whole region is clamoring right now for short-term solutions, and then what's the long-term plan regionally. There's a meeting going to be set up with Pat Cullen out of Wayne County to look at doing a MRF for the region, similar to what Washtenaw County's just done. So that's.
Is that part of the work group then that they met on? Was that part of, I'm sorry, was that part of what the legislature had met on in 2017? Is everybody talking to each other then? I'm just, because they said they.
When I spoke to our local legislators, they didn't know anything about recycling even being a problem, but they're now investigating it. So it's new to a lot of people, and it's going to have to be driven, like the grants and what have you, from an administrative level, not by the legislators. We want our legislators to advocate on our behalf, but it's going to be administratively driven.
And they're just now getting to trying to formulate a plan on how to use those grants. The department is still figuring that, what the goal is, what the matrix are that they're going to use for that. So none of the grants have been let yet that I'm aware of. But I was not aware of the work group, so I will check into that and get familiar with that.
We had actually won a grant 2 years ago for the recycling bin. So we're looking at, Greg is looking at if we can use this again, or Bob Belair was, I'm sorry. One question about the PA 51. So right now, we know that the governor's also talking about shell games with the funding. You know, previously, even though something might have been collected for schools or something, it might have been shifted somewhere else with the general fund. One of the items that's collected are truck fees, and that has been going to, I believe, Summer, you said that was the MDOT library or something?
No, penal fines go to fund libraries.
Okay. So how do we get things like truck fees back into the roads rather than doing the shell game still?
Well, and that's the governor's whole goal with this budget that she's recommended, like I suggested with the general fund that supplemented the funding needed for road repair last session into the transportation budget. They took the general fund dollars from the school aid fund and put it in transportation. She's wanting to shift that back. It's all a matter of, the one problem that the state has right now, in my opinion, is general fund dollars, because so much of the revenue that's coming into the state is earmarked. So you have a very limited amount of dollars that are able to be used for other purposes. And so that's when it gets really tricky, particularly for the school aid budget and some of those other budgets where there isn't a lot of federal dollars coming into it. Corrections budget, for instance, not a lot of federal dollars flowing into that budget. So the library funding, I mean, I've heard that the libraries, they're very concerned about losing that. You're going to have to replace a lot of these various funds. The cancer presumption fund for firefighters, that they lost their dedicated revenue when the recreational marijuana passed, because they were getting an excise tax off the medical marijuana that's no longer available. So there's a lot of these little things, library funding being one of them, and I don't mean to be disparaging by saying little, but there's a lot of these line items that are going to have to be searching for funding sources or getting general fund dollars in, and that's going to be all part of the whole budget negotiations as things go forward. Did that answer your question?
Sure. Yep, thank you.
Josh, I know you work quite a bit with Stephanie through public safety issues. Any questions, comments for Stephanie this evening? Greg, Wendy? All good? Stephanie, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation, and we'll see you in 6 months or so, or sooner, if issues pop up. Very good. Okay, now we have a public hearing, I think is the next item on the agenda. Consent calendar, let me see, where am I at? Let me catch up with,
So-
okay, yeah, let's, we have a public hearing, then we'll do consent calendar? Would you like to read? Okay. Would you like to make a motion to have Stephanie's comments put into the record?
Yes. Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion that we put Stephanie's comments in the in the board, in the,
Our records. Very good. Do we have a
Support.
second? Thank you. Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Very good. Public hearing, item PH1, is host a public hearing and consider approval of application for MDNR, Natural Resources Trust Fund Grant.
so, Mr. Supervisor, I move to open the public hearing for comment on the MDNR, Michigan National Resource Trust Fund grant application towards funding the purchase and installation of bridges and the Lower Rouge Trail between I-275 and Hannon Road, and it is 7:43.
Second?
Carry the motion presented, please state aye.
Aye.
In summary, Canton Leisure Services is seeking approval to apply for Michigan Department of Natural Resources grant that, if awarded, would be implemented in 2019-2020 year. A public hearing and formal board approval to apply for the grant are required components. The project is proposed to take place along the Lower Rouge River Trail, which provides non-motorized trail access, Public Works water sewer access. The Public Works Division would like to gain additional access to the east segment of the water sewer lines by adding a pathway to the I-275 and the Hannon Road. The Public Works Division will be installing the pathway portion of the trail similar to the existing portion, the Lower Rouge Trail. Canton is seeking additional support through the Michigan National Resources Trust Fund for the purchase and installation of the bridge crossings in this segment of the pathway. Used for the maintenance of vehicles and pedestrian recreation. The total cost of the bridge purchase and installation is estimated at $310,433.30. And Leisure Services is applying for an MDNR Trust Fund grant in the amount of $155,216. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? George, please. Could you please come to the podium, George? I want to be able to record your.
I'd like to know if there's going to be a public comment here. Other people went ahead, and I noticed on the agenda, there's no public comment here.
George, actually,
Is
after.
that coming up?
I'll do it again at the end of the meeting, but I did call for it at the beginning of the meeting as well, after the birthday, and I did. It's okay, yeah, no problem, George. We'll do it again at the end. Thank you, George. Is there any public comment related to this item? Any public comment related to this item? Any board comment? This is a formality to go through the hearing. Are there any questions for Greg this evening? Go ahead, Steve.
Just ask the director just where this falls in the overall plan of finishing this part east of 275.
It's the next section that's in our plan to continue the trail east so that we'll have our connection to the east side of Canton. And then we would, from there, begin working from our, blanking out on the park name right now,
Oh, yeah. And
from the
so-
ITC corridor west,
Yeah.
continuing west there.
Oh, wait.
Loden Park, thank you, Wendy.
I'm sorry, I guess I was misinterpreting where this was. I thought this would be east of 275 for some reason.
This would be east of 275, so it'll be, currently the Lower Rouge Trail ends
okay.
at the 275
Yeah.
connection to the north-south MDOT trail. So this would continue the trail from that section east to the Wayne border.
So have we done any of the new part of it yet, or it won't start until this bridge? is done?
DPW is working on continuing the trail, to building the portion of the trail right now. We actually applied for this grant last year. The DNR indicated that we would likely receive it. However, since the trail portion wasn't in place, they've been burned on that in the past to where they've awarded something like the bridges and the trail never gets done and you have bridges sitting in the middle of the woods, so they wouldn't award it until the trail construction was done. So we
Okay.
just deferred, we withdrew our application based on that feedback last year and then are reapplying this year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good. Call for a motion to close the public hearing.
Supervisor, at 7:47, I move to close a public hearing.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3, or third motion here, Diane, when you're ready.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve submission of an application to the Michigan National Natural Resource Trust Fund toward the purchase of the installation of 2 bridges along the Lower Rouge Trail between I-275 and Hannon Road, and to accept the funds if approved.
Second.
In favor of the third motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Carries. Fourth motion.
Furthermore, I move to approve the following resolution in support of the Michigan Natural Resource Trust Grant Fund. Sorry. Where-
Support.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor of the fourth motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. And now we move on to, yes, if our temporary clerk Slavens could
Yes.
read the consent calendar as a single item.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Support.
In favor of the motion?
Oh, wait, I guess you were going to read them,
Okay,
sorry.
go ahead and read the
Fine.
summary.
Yep.
C1, request for resolution of local body of government to recognize the Workman Elementary School PTO at 250 North Denton Canton Center Road as a nonprofit in the community for purposes of making application for a charitable gaming license to the Bureau of State Lottery. C2, set public hearing for consideration of local government approval for the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Liquor Control Commission liquor license application of Desi Restaurant Group LLC for a Class C quota license located at 42070 Ford Road, Canton, Michigan. C3, resolution declaring the month of April as Fair Housing Month in Canton Township. C4, consider the second reading of the amendment to the Appendix A zoning of the Code of Ordinance for the SS Homes rezoning and appraisal of Third Amendment to the Monterey Consent Judgment. And C5, consider approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Friends of the Rouge regarding a future water trail on the Rouge River.
Now support.
In favor of the motions as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now on to our general calendar, item G1. Consider payment of annual GIS software maintenance fees to ESRI, Environmental Systems Research Institute, Inc. No problem. Single resolution. Two motions here.
Supervisor, I move to approve the following budget adjustments. Increase revenue fund balance appropriation listed in our packet for $9,400, and increase expenditures, maintenance and repair computer equipment, the number listed in our packet for $9,400.
Support.
Thank you.
Summary, this is the re-upping that we do annually of the GIS software packages. Is there any board comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The second motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to authorize the supervisor to sign the 3-year agreement effective March 2019 through March 2022, and a payment of ESRI for maintenance and support for a total cost not to exceed $50,000 per year.
Support.
In favor of the second motion as presented, state aye.
Aye.
2, consider approval of annual payment for the township's Microsoft email archiving services.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve increasing the purchase order for a total of $20,400 payable to CDW Government for a renewal of email archives services provided by Microsoft Corporation covering a period for 1 year.
Support.
Summary, IT Services prepares budgets 2 years in advance with the best possible financial projections available at the time. As Microsoft Corporation held its prices, email archive services flat, IT Services did not anticipate or budget for an increase in fees. when preparing the 2019 budget in 2017. The amount requested on January 22nd, 2019, G8 was insufficient to cover the cost for 2019 once the actual costs were provided to the Township in February of 2019. Township's email archiving service is due for renewal March 15th, 2019, in the next 3 days. The amount approved by the board in January was for $16,200. The actual increased amount is $20,400. IT services purchase order renewal, Township's email archive service to $20,400 from the previously approved $16,200. And I think Wendy had sent out a note on this last week, and I don't know if there's any board questions. Seeing none, those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Supervisor, I move to award a contract for a 2019 street tree planting program to Margolis Companies for a total of amount not to exceed $13,500.
Support.
Planning Services received 6 qualified bids for the spring 2019 street planning program. The lowest qualified bidders was Margolis Companies with a bid of $11,950 for the work. Are there any questions? This falls under Jeff's bailiwick. It's a routine approval that we're walking through, but it does allow us to replace dead trees along the streets. Is there any board questions? I probably wouldn't be able to answer this evening, but I'd get an answer tomorrow if you had one. Seeing none. All right, those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item G4.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the following budget amendment. Increase expenditure listed in our packet, water capital outlay infrastructure for $42,440, and decrease expenditure listed in our packet, professional services engineering for $42,440.
Support.
Thank you.
Summary, on August 14, 2018, the board awarded professional design and construction engineering services to NCI to complete the design and obtain permitting from MDEQ for the permit for water main replacement on Franciscan Court, East and West, and Princeton Street. Prepare the plans for bidding, obtain permitting from the county, hold a pre-bid meeting, and evaluate the bidders. This work also included abandoning a small portion of the water main on Cornell Street. NCI was also asked to handle all the construction engineering inspection. Upon review of the plans and bid documents, engineering services identified additional work at these project locations that should be completed with the 2018 water main replacement projects. These included extending the water main replacement on Dartmouth Street, Princeton Street, and adding a water main replacement under Sheldon Road that was not completed with the last year's project, as well as the associated construction engineering inspection costs. That's what we are asking for funds for this evening. Are there any questions? Board questions? Okay, well, maintenance repair. Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a second motion here? Was there one?
And Mr. Supervisor, I move to increase an increase of PO 2018-2645 for the 2018 water main CIP design to Northwest Consultants, Inc. by $42,440, combined with a limit of $86,270 approved on the August 14th, 2018, for a total limit of PO 2018-2645 of $128,710.
Support.
Second motion, correct? Okay, I jumped ahead of myself here. Those in favor of the second motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Item G5, consider approval of an extension of the contract with Rotundo Construction Corporation for the 2019 sidewalk repair program.
Supervisor, I move to approve an extension of the contract with a Rotundo Construction Corporation for the 2019 sidewalk repair program in the amount of $475,000, and further authorize the township to further extend the contract with Rotundo Construction Corporation into the 2020 program year based on satisfactory performance and stable prices.
Support.
Summary, January 2017, Canton Township publicly bid sidewalk repair program, including sidewalk gaps and incidental flat work on the township properties. The board awarded the contract to Rotundo Corporation, Construction Corporation from Farmington Hills for the 2017 program. Rotundo performed well in 2017 and 2018 program with minimal complaints from residents. As provided for in the RBA for last year, there was a provision to extend the contract into 2019 based on satisfactory performance and stable prices. Staff agreed the contractor displayed satisfactory performance and is only requesting a change in unit cost to reflect the increase in base material costs for the concrete in 2019. We have Bill here if there's any questions. Does the board have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Bill.
Bill, can you come to the...
I'm going to make you get up.
Yeah, can you sit, either, you can sit there or there, either one, pick one.
So from my memory, I remember that there was a year that we didn't complete everything that we wanted to in a certain zone. I remember if it was 16 or 17, and I'm just wondering if we're caught up now.
No, you remember several years where we never
Okay.
completed. I did ask my engineer, I'd like a year where we actually finish and don't have anything to carry over. But this year, we are carrying over work in 3 subdivisions that were incomplete last year, and also locations throughout the township that we hope to wrap them all up this year.
And, okay, were there some slotted for this coming year also that we'll have to do at the
We
same
do
time?
have some new subdivisions this year, but we brought the program down a little bit to keep it within the size. Last year, you may recall, we were trying to catch up from the year where we canceled the program.
Right, okay. All right, I'm looking forward to seeing us, like you are, catch up and up to date on it.
You never truly catch up. You get to one side, then you got to go back to the other and start all
But
over
we
again.
were already behind on getting to, going back to the beginning, so. Okay, thank you.
Tom?
One question I had, if Rondo does the sidewalks, and a homeowner comes out and says, Mr. Rondo, I'd like to have my driveway repaired, would Rondo be required to get a permit for that construction?
For the work in the county road right-of-way, are you thinking? Or his driveway?
The whole driveway.
So the work in the county road right-of-way falls under our permit, so that is a benefit to the resident because they don't have to pull that. The work on the driveway, if they actually replace it, Joe is here, actually. If my memory serves, we work out an arrangement with the building department where we look at that work. So we roll it into our work. I think that's how we did it in the past.
Self-inspect, basically. Through.
So it is an advantage to the resident in that we take care of all of that, and he doesn't have to permit.
So he does not have to get the homeowner does not have to get a permit for that portion of the concrete that you'll be doing from the state right-of-way up to the front door?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Provided it's exactly the same, remove
Same,
and
yeah.
replace. If they're adding or changing it, then they do have to go through the building department.
What is the cost for a square, is it, for the sidewalk? If I just wanted one section, I think you call it a square, don't you? What do you charge for that square?
For 4-inch square, you're at about $5 a square foot.
$5 a square foot, roughly. Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Did you have the capacity to take on very many of the residents' requests? Did you? Okay, good.
That slow us down also, or does that slow us down? Does that put us further behind when we do that?
Well, we watch what we do, last year we kind of got started a little bit late, so this year we're already planning on getting started early and finishing up.
Okay, thanks.
You just repeat that on TV, basically, that they
Oh,
they
Trying to
are
get-
very careful not to
Weather
cause
was-
it to slow us down.
The weather wasn't very helpful last year with all the rain at the end of the season. You just. Okay, very good. Seeing no further questions, those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. A second motion to this item, okay.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the following budget amendment: increase revenue fee sidewalk replacement listed in our packet for $31,000, and increase expenses, maintenance and repair of sidewalks with the number listed in our packet for $31,000.
Favor of the
Second.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor of the second motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Very good. That concludes our formal agenda this evening. Directors, do we have anything you'd like to add? Seeing none. Board, any comments?
Yes, I just have a question. So when we put the lobbyist reports in, I mean, are we including these documents also? Okay, they are going in.
Michael will need a set of them.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got an extra set here for Michael.
Okay, thanks. Did you get one?
Okay, yeah, also.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Miller's gone home.
Oh.
Is there anybody who would like to make additional public comment? Is there anybody who would like to make additional? Yes, you did, and you're okay. I'll even drink your coffee. Absolutely. Michael, you'd like to make comments, sir?
I had a bunch of stuff I was going to talk about tonight. Michael Schultz, Dion Street, Canton. But I'm kind of delighted. What could be better than having a 20-year tax on roads, then another 50 cents a gallon on gas? I mean, if I was a pig, I'd be super happy. The problem is, what happens when the gas goes up to $5 a gallon? For one of the guys I worked with, it's an extra $4,000 a year. That's a lot of cash. That's it. I'm thinking about what it's going to do to the tourism of this state. You know, now the economy's coming back. I don't see good things happening by being a pig about this. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Is there any additional public comment? Any additional public comment? Go ahead, Anne Marie.
Can we look at maybe, since you had your meetings, having a target date for a study session on recycling?
It's been established 26th, because we were going to combo with the next item, which was public safety. We're going to talk about fire station. What is the date of that? March 26th? April 16th. So I believe we're piggybacking with that. Amy and I discussed it this morning, so that should be happening.
Okay, thanks.
Date, I just can't tell you if it was end of March or early April. So
Okay, can I add one more thing? So I'd just like to thank, I mean, I know our firefighters, we had a big fire a couple of weeks ago, and you had sent out an email, Pat, you know, congratulations on getting that fire out and nobody getting injured and saving 8 families, and they're taking donations, which is great too. So thank you, good work.
Summer, please.
County Commissioner Melissa Daub is hosting a town hall on April the 4th at the Summit to talk about roads. She's going to have the Director of Public Services from Wayne County there to talk, to help answer questions, and I will be there to talk about the Township Road Program.
No further comment. Call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Here the motion is presented. Please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Let's have some sweets.
Yes.
Lots of sweets.
Cake and baklava.